All right, good evening. Welcome to our July 20th special Board of Commissioners meeting. I'd like to start by introducing our elected officials. We have Commissioner Dave Bland. Hello, Dave. Commissioner Larry Whitley.
Hello.
Mayor Pro Tem Renee Garner. Commissioner Jeff Miller. Commissioner John Urban. And Commissioner Ken McCool. Also with the town, we have Town Manager Hazen Blodgett, Assistant Town Manager Becky Hawk, Town Clerk Lori Canapino.
This meeting is being recorded.
Planning Director Jay Camp, Public Works Director CJ O'Neill, and we have two very special guests with us tonight, CMS Chairperson of the School Board, Elyse Dashew, and District 6 Representative, our Representative Sean Strain. So welcome. We asked Sean and Elyse to come tonight to give us a presentation on the plan for opening schools or not, as it be, coming up in a few weeks. And we'll let them speak for a bit, and then I guess we'll have an opportunity to ask any questions we'd like to ask. So we'll start with you, Elyse.
Well, thank you. And I'll begin by, I want to thank you, Mayor Higdon, and all of the town commissioners for your leadership in battling this pandemic. I know you've been out there in front on calling for people to wear their masks and practice social distancing and wash their hands. And that is just so incredibly important. And as we near the reality of what's happening with school the next year, with the COVID infection numbers the way they are, it's we just really got to bring these numbers down. So thank you. I know you guys have been real aggressive in promoting that, and I wanted to thank you for that. And so school is beginning August 17th, but it is going to look very different than it has ever looked before. We are going to be starting with a brief period of in-person orientation in small groups of students with social distancing and wearing masks. In that brief period of orientation, they will get to know their teachers, some of their classmates, and get set up with their technology, learn how this remote learning is going to work, and then they're going home. And then we're going to remote learning until we can bring the COVID numbers down. We would like to see some metrics to help guide us for when we will get kids back into the classroom, but that still has to be developed. Since we've made our decision Wednesday night, a number of districts have followed, and there are, I believe, 25 districts voting tonight and tomorrow. So we may be at a point soon where the bulk of students in North Carolina are learning from home, in which case I'm hopeful that we can get some guidance from the governor on some metrics similar to what California and New York have. But if not, we'll figure that out here locally. But I really hope sooner rather than later, ASAP, we can bring the numbers down so that it is safe to get our kids back in the classroom, because that is where they learn the best. So right now, the most important thing that we need for parents to do, and if you can help us get the word out, is make sure that parents are in touch with their schools and that their schools have the most up-to-date contact info for the parents, because there's going to be a lot of information coming out to parents, and we want to make sure you're in the system to get that info. For parents that want their children to learn remotely all year or all semester, they will have that option. So like I said, we're hoping to get kids back in the classroom sooner rather than later, but there are some parents who have their children have pre-existing conditions, or a family member does, or they're just anxious. They have a low risk tolerance. That is an option to do. It's called the Full Remote Academy. And you can register for that now. If you go over to the CMS website, front page of the CMS website, cms.k12.nc.us, you can sign up for the Full Remote Academy. that signups are going through Sunday, and we the more people that sign up for that, the better we will. Well, so I'll just say Wake County has had, I believe, about 40,000 families, 40,000 students sign up for that, which gives them a lot more. They're a lot. Once we know that, we'll be a lot better to work out the logistics of the kids who will be going to school in the classroom, because we'll be assigning teachers to the students who sign up for Remote Academy, and then we'll know the teachers that will be handling the classroom learning when we go back to classroom learning. So that will be really important to nail down. A lot of people are asking, what is the difference between the full Remote Academy and the plan that we're in, which is called Plan B plus Remote. And Lori, actually, or Ms. Campanino, if you could share the slide that I sent you. I'm not sure that I can multitask so well. Thank you so much. We've got
While you're pulling that up, if I could interject, I forgot to introduce Charles Buckley, our attorney. So I don't believe I recognized you, Charlie.
It has been a while since we were together.
All right. So if you want your kids in school in person as soon as it's safe, then you don't have to do anything. Just be enrolled at your school, at your regular school. Just make sure they've got your contact info, and you're good to go. Before school starts, you will get information as to who your child's teacher is, or if they're middle school or high school, what their schedule is. You'll get all your bus transportation information. In B plus Remote, students will be divided into cohorts. And so during the orientation period, your child will go to school for just a few days with 1/3 of their class. That way we can practice social distancing on the bus, because we can't crowd too many people on the bus all at once. And we can practice social distancing in the classroom. We can't have a full classroom full of kids in a class. So that's why we're dividing it up like that. But you will get information onto what day to catch the bus, what day to go to school, who your teacher is, and you'll get all of that info from your school before school starts. So that's if you're doing Plan B plus Remote. If you want your child to do remote learning all semester, then you sign up for the full Remote Academy. If you do that, you are still assigned to your regular school. So a lot of people are in magnet schools and they're worried, am I going to lose my seat in this magnet? Am I going to be disenrolled from this magnet? No, you will not be. You will still be. If you're in a language immersion magnet, your full Remote Academy will be language immersion. If you're in a STEAM, science, technology, engineering, and math magnet, your full Remote Academy will be that same theme with teachers from your school. As we all adapt to this new world and we figure out how to do extracurriculars in this new world, and if hopefully, at some point we can return to sports and you're in full Remote Academy, all of those options are still available to you. If you are in talent development, TD, if your kid's extra accelerated, or if your kid needs special services for learning disabilities, they will still get that in full Remote Academy. You can work with your school psychologist and your counselors if you need that. So it's all of that. The only difference is that you are fully remote for the whole semester. You don't have to think about coming back in to school when CMS resumes school in the classroom. So there's this third slide has a link with 3 short websites with lots more information. And just know in the days ahead, all parents should have actually gotten a Connect Ed call today from CMS, and then another one from your individual school with a lot of this information. And on Thursday, we're going to do a Facebook Live that people can tune into and ask all their questions for the experts who will be online ready to answer that. Let me see what else I can say. This will be the remote learning, whether it's you're in Plan B plus remote or whether you're in the full remote academy. Your remote learning will be a very different experience than the way it was in the spring. So in the spring, when we had to shut the schools down unexpectedly, we had to kind of lurch into we had to come up with that remote learning really quickly. And also we were not permitted by the state to give students grades or to do any testing. And there was a lot of back and forth on the guidance as to whether they could move forward with new instruction. So this school year, everyone's getting graded. We know that for sure. We're taking attendance just like in a regular school year. And our team have been working for months. They've taken some of our star teachers, our best teachers, and have worked with them and with our academics team for months to create this almost like a homeschool that is rigorous and engaging. And the team is, I haven't had the opportunity to do a whole test drive of all the grades and all the classes, but the team is really excited about it, actually. So this is going to be a very different experience and hopefully a much more enriching experience. We are committed to getting technology to every single one of our students. We're fortunate in that we've been investing in that and building up our technology over the years anyway, so we're well positioned, but we're also using our CARES funding for that. And the philanthropic community has been very generous, especially with hotspots for families who do not have internet. And so I think that's pretty much my update. The most important thing is to just make sure families they're registered with a school already. If you have to be in the CMS system, and make sure your school has up-to-date phone number and email address for you so they can be in touch with you. There's lots more info to come over the next few weeks. And I would just ask all of us to, I really feel for the working families right now who are going to be juggling their jobs and their kids. There's no good answer in front of us. And this was sort of the least bad answer. So if you're an employer, do your best to be flexible with your employees. And for our families that are living paycheck to paycheck, we've got to wrap our hands as a community, our arms around these kids while we get through this.
All right. Thank you, Elyse. Sean, is there anything you'd like to add or say?
No, we voted on this last Wednesday. It's the direction the board chose in terms of moving forward with this particular plan. As recently as this afternoon, I was working with the county health department to better understand our disease prevalence in Mecklenburg County and in various parts of Mecklenburg County, and how we best communicate that and address that both in terms of understanding the characteristics and risk profiles of the sorts of activities we're talking about. As we know, every one of the activities we choose to do has a different risk profile. And every one of those is a reduced risk when you keep your distance, you wear your mask, you wash your hands. This stuff is motherhood and apple pie, and we have to continue to do that. That being said, it's about understanding each of us as individuals, and those of us as leaders have to understand the activities we're asking our teams to do, those that we're providing services to engage in, and make sure we understand what those risk profiles look like, what mitigation measures that we are taking, and CMS has developed a whole host of those to reduce the risk of transmission within our schools, and we will continue to work in that direction and get our kids back in school as soon as we can, we know full well that that is the best place for them to learn.
Absolutely agree with that. Do either of you have a feel for what that level may be that we consider safe? I mean, what do we have to get to as far as COVID? Is that the $64,000 question, or does anybody know?
I don't want to get out of the epidemiological experts on that.
Yeah, they're currently saying it's unsafe, but I don't know what safe is. Commissioner Bland, do you have a comment?
I just want to ask a question.
Sure.
I mean, under these plans, I think it's great. You guys are working hard, doing a great job. I'm not being critical at all. I'm just curious. What happens when a student shows up and it turns out that they're positive in a classroom or on a bus? What do they do with respect to the other kids? Are they going to have to sit out 14 days? What's going to happen?
I can take that, or do you want to take that, Sean?
Go ahead, Elyse.
So if they come down with symptoms, well, so first of all, before a child gets on a bus, their parent has to, sign an attestation saying, my child is symptom free. And if your child has symptoms, you need to keep them home. Then once they get to school, every child will have their temperature taken, which will be different. It'll be logistically a feat, I think, to get all the kids' temperatures taken and into the schoolhouse. If you're running a fever, or if you come down with symptoms, schools are supposed to have rooms set aside for students to go to. It cannot be the regular sick room. It's got to be a different room. And they wait there until the family comes and picks them up. Then they get tested. And I would like to see rapid response time on the testing, because that's a concern right now. It's a good week before you get a response, or if someone is positive or negative. But then if it's positive, the exposure depends upon social distancing and mask wearing. So there is a whole protocol, and I may not be listing all the steps out for you accurately here because I don't have them in front of me, but there's a whole chain of events that that schools are responsible for following. But for anyone who's quarantined, then they would, people who are exposed, I think, would have to be quarantined.
I know that's the question I'm trying to get to. I'm worried about, say my kid's in a class that, one of the kids has been asymptomatic, and then all of a sudden it turns out his brother or sister gets sick, and it turns out that he or she has been sick for a week or is positive but doesn't have any symptoms. What happens to all the rest of the kids that are in that person's classroom and all the kids that rode on the bus with them? What happened to them and their families?
And the teachers and the bus driver.
So
all those people, what do they do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if I could, so so this isn't the first viral disease that we've faced as a community, as a school system. In fact, every year we face influenza, another viral disease spread very similarly. And so from that perspective, looking at the processes that we currently have in place, the current CDC guidelines that say that the quarantine period should be 10 days from the point at which you have a confirmed positive. For those individuals who are identified as positive, one of the things, so first of all, the plan that we are moving forward with right now is a virtual plan. There is an initial orientation, and then it's full virtual. So we don't have this scenario that you're asking about, Commissioner Bland, until such time as we go back to the schools. But when we do go back to the schools, we face this, and the current plan is to rotate all of the students every week. They will either be on-site or off-site, and the pattern of that is effectively a week on-site in classroom learning, in school learning, and then 2 weeks out of classroom learning. Incidentally, that also fits very well with the period such that if there is a positive, then they're already scheduled to spend 2 weeks out of the school. And so that works as well. I think one of the things that certainly I've been impressed with regards to staff is leveraging their existing processes and in partnership with the school nurses who are part of the county health department to ensure that we are taking what we know, what our families know, and applying it to this particular viral disease.
Thank you.
Commissioner McCool.
And if I could I just want to, Sean reminded me of something that I just want to give a shout out to our staff who have worked around the clock with just unimaginable logistics. And I'm just so impressed with what they have come up with and just the dignity with which they have risen to this challenge. I just want to make sure I get to say that publicly every opportunity I get.
Sure.
We've all got our fingers crossed. I'm telling you, I know I've got mine crossed. I hope so. You guys are working as hard as you can. That's all you can do.
Commissioner McCool, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I have a couple questions, so bear with me. First, how many are enrolled in the full remote academy so far?
You know what? I'm going to have to get a number for you. I don't have that at my fingertips.
And then what kind of contact and response have you heard from teachers? I know a lot of this is talking about parents, kids. And it feels like sometimes, at least I've heard from some teachers who teach in Matthews schools who feel left out. Mm-hmm. So what kind of outreach has been going on there?
We have had we have quite a few speaking at the board meeting tomorrow night. We have requests from the public. A lot of us have been in touch with teachers. I have, in my 5 years on the board, this is by far the last week of emails and phone calls and Facebook, Twitter messages, Instagram messages. It is by far the highest volume I've ever experienced. More so than student assignment, more so than anything we've been through. And these were, yesterday I was still catching up on emails. I started out the day with 630 emails to respond to, and these were not canned emails. These were from the heart and from parents, but mainly from teachers and staff, school psychologists, other staff. So they have a lot to say here. We did our HR department did a sort of a survey just to check in with teachers, similar to typically in a normal year in the springtime, the principal will check in with his teachers to find out who's resigning, who's retiring, who's going to need some medical leave just to help with the planning purposes. This year, because of the pandemic, that HR sent that out centrally. And that, so that was, in addition, part of that was to let people know if you need to take medical leave because of pre-existing conditions that make you worry about this, here's how to do that. That was sort of seen by the teachers as it almost like rattled teachers, the way the questions landed on them. And it wasn't meant to do that. It was truly just a planning tool, and follow up with your principal if you need more info. So with that, 88% of the teachers said, given the questions you're asking me, I don't have one of these pre-existing conditions. I'm not going to resign or retire it as of right now, but they weren't asked, are you comfortable coming back in the classroom? Are you scared? That sort of a thing. So there's been some consternation about how that was interpreted. But based on that, it was 88%, said, I'm coming back, based on the emails and the phone calls and pulse checks with principals, especially in the past week or two leading up to last Wednesday. It was a very different scenario.
Yeah, I spoke to 5 teachers this last week, and 2 of whom said they had to write a will because of this. I mean, that's a scary thing to go through. We ask teachers to put on a lot of hats, and now we're asking them to be health inspectors. Just a it's a lot we're kind of putting on our teachers. So I kind of want to advocate for them. And I have one other question. What about lunch? Like, I'm not terribly far removed from being in high school. So it's like, what are you going to do about lunch? All these kids are congregated. They're not going to be wearing masks or be eating. I mean, that's a big concern of mine is, what's going to happen there? I feel like if the virus is going to spread, it's going to be in that environment.
Sean, I feel like I'm dominating. Do you want to take that one?
I don't know the answer, to be honest, in terms of lunch. I will say that one of the interesting things, to your point, Commissioner McCool, when we spent better than 3 hours last week with experts in the public health and healthcare industries, our partners, right, in this, one of the things that they said was, look, we can take all the precautions in the world, and we do. I recall vividly the doctors saying where we're seeing spread amongst us is in the break room, not directly dealing with the disease itself and diseased patients and providing that tremendous health care that both Novant and Atrium were representing there since they were with us. But they were saying that's what we've had to do is go to our staff and make sure that they're not letting down their guard, that they are not congregating in the break room. The other thing that they said is, since you raised it, Commissioner McCool, is that the viral spread amongst folks younger than 11, effectively elementary school kids, is minimal. They have a far lower, they claimed, and based on physiology, a far lower rate of contraction of the disease, transmission of the disease, and a serious illness as a result of contracting the disease. And that's a statement about the youngest among us in our communities. And we should take something from that. It is about risk profiling, understanding, managing, mitigating those risks. And in that, both our teachers in those facilities, our elementary schools, and our students and the parents that send them should take some level of confidence from that fact that we are putting in place all of the mitigating measures. And aside from that, the physiology of our younger students is such that the risk is much lower. With specific respect to your lunch question, I don't know the details. Elyse, has it been decided that lunches would be box lunches in a classroom? Has that been decided at this point?
I think so, but again, I would want to confirm that also. But it is, the classrooms will look very, very different. Desks that are chairs and desks that are 6 feet apart. And it may be the kids just have to sit at their desk and eat there. They will not be all congregating in the cafeteria. I know that for sure. And then we're going to have to continue grab and go lunches for when they're not, for those that are relying on school for food.
Okay.
But just back to your point, Commissioner McCool, we can talk about the fact that the board has selected a remote learning plan. But that first 2 weeks, we're doing orientations, we're serving lunches, the kids are in the classes. We're there. Mm-hmm. And so all of these questions, frankly, staff have answered. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I don't have a definitive answer for you, but it has been, and Elyse talked about this, amazing to see the work done by our staff to prepare to host kids in the schools and protect the teachers and the students and modify our processes and mitigating procedures accordingly.
And work out all the HR procedures for the staff, and just goes on and on.
Will the remote learning class size be similar to a standard class size? We're not going to have remote classes of 60 children or something, are we?
That's a really good question. No, I think I haven't asked that specific question, but I think we still need a reasonable workload for our teachers, and I would think even that the teacher-student ratio rules would still apply, laws would apply.
I was just concerned that all the children are able to ask questions and things of that nature, even though it's remote, and that there's not so many kids that couldn't do that easily.
And it will be a combination of synchronous. So these are two sort of jargony words that I think people are going to learn, or else we're going to have to come up with plain English ways of saying it. But synchronous and asynchronous learning. And so the synchronous learning means everyone's on Zoom like this, and the teacher is teaching, and all the students are interacting. And during, I think that's 30% of the school day. And then the rest of the school day is asynchronous. So that means students are doing their own individual work. They might be watching videos, sort of like, videos, and doing homework and writing papers and doing art projects or scavenger hunts, or, and there will be small group work. So teachers can set aside, okay, John and Larry and Becky, we're going to go work in this room, this Zoom room over here. So there will be a lot of that happening too.
Okay.
I will say, Mayor Higdon, that I sat in on one of the principals' town halls today with her staff. And she is at the point where she's divided out the teachers that will be focused on the remote learning academy, committed actually for the year, is what she had decided was, committed for the full year. Or, if we go to a plan A, then obviously that would have to be revisited. But other than that, she had allocated teachers to that full-time remote, even if we brought sort of the plan B back in with teaching and learning in the schools. And so one of the things that she talked about is having done those assignments now. And at this point, the folks that are on sort of the plan B route have 15 students per class. And then the other students, now these are all planning assumptions. I think it was Commissioner McCool's question. We don't know. The registration is still open currently for our, virtual academy. And that will vary by school. And ultimately those master schedules are going to have to be put together, and the assignments of individual teachers, to your point, based on which students select which classes and are in which program. And it is a very challenging logistical maneuver just to make sure that we align everything and meet individual students' needs, which is certainly our objective.
Sure. Mayor Pro Tem Garner, do you have a question?
Yes, I have a few questions. I have questions from parents and so I said I would pass them along. If a parent chooses Plan B plus, do they have to send their kids this first, during the ABC rotation, the first 2 weeks?
They don't. If they're worried about it, they don't have to. We may have to. I was just clarifying the attendance, how attendance works, and if we would have to mark them absence per state law. And so I think that they may have to take an excused absence, but they should, talk to their principal about that. But if they're worried about sending their child to school those first few days, they don't need to do that, even if they're on Plan B.
Okay. So, I know that there are studies saying that elementary school kids are not the super spreaders, but we haven't, at least, here in Matthews, we haven't seen evidence of children being that socially active and returning to normal. So I feel like parents see their children as still sort of contained within the isolation and don't feel confident, yet sending their kids back to school. So and the next question is, in Plan B plus, if CMS decides to do the in-person rotation in the middle of the semester, do they have to send their kid, or can they continue doing remote learning? So if it goes back to the regular school, can at that point they opt over to remote learning if they don't feel confident sending
You know what I would say to that is if they're concerned, I would really recommend that they sign up for the full remote academy and just stick to it for the semester. They'll still be assigned to their school. They'll still be a part of their school community. They'll have a teacher from their school, most likely, unless something crazy happens. Do extra, maybe remote extracurriculars, but do extracurriculars with their school. I would just recommend that if they've got that level of trepidation. And I get it that the science thus far to lay people for sure has been confusing and sometimes contradictory. You go back a couple months when people were saying don't wear masks. And so I can understand being nervous about, well, the doctor said that, epidemiologists and the health experts said this today, but what are they going to say next week? So I'm not trying to scare people. I'm just saying I understand that fear. And in that case, people may just really want to stick with full plus remote, but it really helps us to know planning wise, because we have to assign a teacher.
Right. And then the third question is for middle school students. So if somebody's in band at Crestdale, how do you do band remote learning? Do you have an idea?
It will be, I think our teachers are incredibly creative and they will find a way to adapt. So can everything be done remotely? I don't know, but I know that I think our teachers are capable of doing some really cool stuff.
Okay, but there will be like a band and theater. It's just going to be remote instead of in the classroom. Okay, Great. Thank you.
We'll still have the fun stuff.
I came up with one question. When it comes to like theater and band and all those, their funding is going to stay the same, right? I know it varies, but because you're not going to be selling tickets to go see a theater show. You're not going to be selling baked goods. You're not going to be doing those kind of things. You're going to be selling tickets to ball games. So is there going to be a makeup for that funding? What's that looking like? I know it may go from a school basis, but I'm kind of curious.
Well, from the CMS perspective, we take care of the operational funding and the capital funding. And so there you're talking about like the PTA fundraisers or like the theater tickets help pay for costumes, I suppose. And, I suppose that could take a hit, and sports programs. And I can foresee that.
Because it may not affect us right now because maybe they don't need those things. But what about next year, 2021, that funding usually needs to be in place. So I don't know if they're going to look into seeing if we can have like an easement or I don't, it may be a school-to-school thing. I'm not sure, but just kind of look towards the future.
Mm-hmm.
I hope we have a vaccine by then.
Yeah.
Please.
Elyse, I have a question. You or Sean, typically minority kids cannot afford laptops or iPads, or maybe not even have internet in their homes. I heard you mention just a little bit at the beginning. Could you tell me how we might be able to address parents who are low income, cannot afford maybe internet, or have their kids that have iPads or laptops?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking that, because we really do need to lift that up and raise awareness about that. We have provisioned technology, either a laptop or an iPad. It's iPads for the little ones and laptops for the older kids for every CMS student, every single one. In order to get that, they have to be in touch with their school. That was the challenge with the shutdown last spring. There were some students who, the shutdown happened before schools could get their kids prepared. And so then we had to kind of chase them down and get them their technology. And there were quite, I think 3,000, they ended up whittling the number down, but started out with 3,000 students that schools, for all tries they might, could not get a hold of them and get them their technology. This is part of why it's so important to have this in-person orientation at the beginning of the year. But we do have that technology. As for the internet too, we believe that for those who don't have internet at home, we believe we're going to have hotspots enough to cover everybody. I don't want to say that 100% guarantee, but we believe we do, thanks in part to very generous folks who have contributed to the CMS Foundation for that very reason. So we have it. The question is getting it to the kids who need it, who sometimes have a lot of instability at home. And so if you in your congregation or in your network or anybody on this call knows about a kid who doesn't have a laptop, help us, tell us so we can get them one. And also, I will say, if there are multiple siblings, say there's 5 kids in a home, they should have 5 devices. They don't all need to be sharing one laptop.
Okay, sounds good.
If I could add, Reverend Whitley, thank you for lifting that up. We're absolutely committed to that. We've got a Chromebook rollout that is second to none in the world in terms of the size of the Chromebook rollout, and that commitment, as Chair Dashew said, is to every one of our students, the younger ones with iPads, the older ones with Chromebooks. And I also want to reinforce what the chair said. In May, I got a call from one of our partners, philanthropic partners, and said, "Sean, how can I help?" And so I explained some of the challenges in moving to a virtual and digital environment. And what came of that was that Mr. and Mrs. Tepper got together with the Belk family and wrote $1 million check between them, the Belk families and Mr. and Mrs. Tepper, to provision 6,000 hotspots. And 1,500 of those we ended up using. 4,500 of those, rather, we still have in reserve and are committed to continuing moving those out as necessary to make sure that every one of our families has the internet connectivity that is required in order to support this virtual program.
That sounds good, Sean. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Hawk.
Thank you. Elyse and Sean, I serve as the staff liaison to our Committee on Education. And so when I let them know about this meeting, a couple of them sent me a couple questions. So these are actually from some of our Committee on Education members. But the first one relates to the Full Remote Academy and whether or not all classes will be offered on the Full Remote Academy. For example, AP classes or honors classes, or is some of that going to be dependent on whether or not enough children sign up for that learning model? And then I've got a couple more questions after that.
I want to, Sean, go for it if you have it, but I'm looking up an FAQ to make sure I answer that correctly.
No, please do. And because I'll answer from what I know, but if Elyse has notes on this, the Full Virtual Academy actually gives us some flexibility there. And so whilst you're working through your schools, there's also an additional opportunity to collaborate. Let's say that you had 3 from one school that wanted access to a course. You couldn't staff a staff member in the school and allocate a room for 3 students. We just can't do that every time 3 students or 2 students want to take a course. But if we have groups and we can slot them in, now, again, I'm not sure exactly where we are on this, Becky, but that's an opportunity that presents itself in a virtual environment that you simply don't get in an in-school environment. We still have to meet the needs of those individual students who want to do that in an in-school environment, whether that is actually putting them into a virtual environment or providing transportation to the next school that's offering that. If there's 3 children, or if there's 3 students, I shouldn't say children, 3 students in a high school that want to take AP Stat, it's very difficult to staff a teacher in a block with a classroom to teach 3 children. And so we work very hard to make sure we can meet the needs of those 3 children because they deserve it. And that's what our commitment is to meeting those individual needs. Again, with a virtual environment, the logistics are in some way a little more complex, in some way easier, if we can do that. So we're certainly looking at ways to do that. Elyse, I don't know if you have any details on that or any specifics in your FAQ.
Yeah, and I wish we had, our chief academic officer on the line, or, someone to answer that more specifically. That's a good question to ask your principal as well. If you have a high school student, ask the principal. But I do think one silver lining of all of this is this possibility, as Sean alluded to, of there may be students who might not have had an opportunity to take an AP class, or to take, like, for example, Japanese. They have an interest in Japanese, may be able to take that by collaborating remotely with another school. There is an opening for that, and that could be a real equity step forward towards equity for our district.
Thanks. A second question related to the full remote academy. This is a little bit in the logistics, but if a student signs up for the full semester of it, but it's a year-long class, and then they are looking to go back in person in the spring semester, do you anticipate that that's going to end up meaning a transition to a completely different class with different teachers, maybe a different schedule? Has any thought been given to that transition for some of these classes that last longer than a semester?
That's a good question. I had been thinking about this semester by semester, and so I think that's one best sent to a principal.
Sure, understood. Two more. I'll be quick. But you did mention the asynchronous and the synchronous learning, and it does look like some limitations have been set as far as how much time is going to be expected for children to be online in a specific amount of time. But sounds like some of our MCE members are hearing from parents that they may be concerned about the amount of time that their child is expected to be online. That certainly sounds like it's a decision that is above the level of the teacher. So if parents are experiencing that concern during the school year, where's the best avenue for them to voice those concerns? Is it the principal? Is it you as school board members? Where should we send them?
I would say principal first. Always feel free to send those to us on the school board as well, and then we can forward that to the needed staff. This is something that we in CMS and school districts all over North Carolina and all over America are going to be experiencing for the first time. And so that sort of real-time feedback, how is this actually playing out in real life, will be very important.
Thanks. And the final question is, what are ways that the community can help during the 14-day in-person time period? What can we be asking our community and our parents to do to assist?
That is incredibly important. And I would love to see, whether it's through churches, through community centers, if there's a way to set up socially distanced, structured overseeing, gatherings for kids. Similar to in the summertime, the YMCA has a Level Up program that has continued this summer with students. They're wearing masks and they're socially distanced, but they're still supervised and doing healthy activities at the Y. If we're going to have to invent something like that as a community, and this is a new time in history, but we're going to have to do something like that.
I would just add that we're seeing a tremendous amount of activity. When I say we, as community members, not as school board members, as a father of four, as many of you know, I've got 4 in 4 schools this year, and every one of them we're looking at differently in terms of how to best meet their needs. There's a tremendous number of groups that are forming to do just that. And so if, in that, I think you're talking about the 14-day period where you're off in Plan B, which I just want to confirm that's the 14-day period you're talking about. When you're in school learning and then out of school continuing the virtual learning in a Plan B scenario, this question of how you best put our students into a situation where they are best prepared and supported to engage virtually. Daycare centers and day camps are continuing, not only through the summer as they've run through the summer, but I've seen more and more of them spin up in response to this need, that they will take them and they will provide the distancing that is provided in the school, and frankly, even in our Plan B plus remote, that's happening, right? So tremendous number of organizations that are spinning up this ability to host children so that they can have a facility and have the level of supervision in those facilities that they can properly engage with that virtual learning that CMS is providing.
Thank you.
Commissioner Miller, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. Thank you. First, I wanted to compliment you on Elyse and Sean and those you represent. I'm pleased that you're empowering the parents to make the decision. That's where it should start, because every family situation is different. I like the CMS learning options for fall 2020. Will that be shared with us digitally? I copy and paste it off the screen onto a document, but will that be shared with a link?
Yeah, I shared that slide that I sent that to Ms. Canapino.
Okay.
And it's got some URLs in there.
Okay, good. And the last question, it was reported on the news, questioning how true it was, that you were receiving, board members were receiving threatening emails. Out of your 600, what percentage of either of your emails were hostile, and were they from employees or teachers, or were they from parents? Or do you mind?
I can only speak for myself, and I had some pretty angry parents. And it is hard to, like, where do you draw the line between what's angry, what's hostile, what's a threat, what's makes you fear for your safety. Sometimes it's not really black and white, but this is a very polarizing time. I think nobody will disagree with that. And so I got a few. I don't know if I could put a percentage on it. It only takes one or two to ruin your day. But it's part of, it goes along with service. It's part of the game.
Thank you.
I would just say that these are difficult times, and these are emotional decisions about our children. As a father first, about decisions I have to make about my daughters, and then obviously decisions we have to make as elected officials about the youth in our community. And I understand the concern and fear from parents, and I understand the concern and fear from our staff. One of the things that we have to be able to do is communicate and articulate the facts as well as we possibly can, so that people are making decisions with good information. You mentioned options, are given the options and the information necessary to make those decisions. And frankly, the information that either justifies the level of fear and concern or assuades those fears, so that people can get comfortable with the decisions they have to make, whether that is parents sending kids into schools or staff going back to work in the schools, to better understand what those scenarios look like and make well-advised decisions. And that's difficult in this environment where everything is sound bites, tweets, Instagram posts, Facebook posts, a soundbite on the evening news, a number that flashes up there that's frankly meaningless to us locally here in terms of the risk for an individual, family, or for a teacher going into the school. And so that's all difficult, and all we can do is continue to work to provide the best information we can so that all of our stakeholders and all of our employees can make the best decisions they possibly can.
And just to speak to how polarized we are and how we just view the world, how we experience the world, I would say probably half of the feedback that I got in emails was, thank you for the way you voted, you followed the science, and you put politics aside. And the other half was, shame on you for ignoring the science and putting politics over science.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions or comments for Sean or Elyse? Commissioner McCool.
I'm sorry, you're gonna hear my voice a lot. With the technology, is there like an online IT hotline for these students? Like, technology breaks. I mean, how many times have we seen it through these Zoom meetings? Something will happen. Wi-Fi will go down. A laptop will break. Something will happen. So, what can these kids do to, is there like an online thing they can go on? Is there someone they can contact?
You want to take that?
We certainly have a staffed helpline for those. But the best way is to get support through their teacher that they know best. When, as you know, particularly up through probably 6th grade, your best connection is with a teacher, maybe a couple, but generally with a teacher, and the teachers can help facilitate that process. But we do have a helpline for parents and even students if they need help with technology.
I think my main concern with what you just said is, I said this earlier, is we're asking our teachers to be healthcare professionals. We're asking them to be teachers. We're asking them to, be therapists. And now we're asking them to be IT professionals. I don't think that's, they're having to do a lot right now too. And that's my concern.
So I certainly appreciate that. There's no technology that those students are using, with the exception of the hotspots, that they don't use every day in the classroom as well.
Okay.
So there's not a tremendous change there.
Okay. And then also, like, for parents who need this and can't afford it, like, if, kids are kids, they're going to break technology. Are parents going to have to worry about if their kid breaks the technology, they're going to have to pay for it? Are they going to get a bill? Like, what's that look like too as well?
Go ahead, Elyse.
I think that you can get a replacement from the school. There may be a limit to how many replacements,
Right.
But the school should be able to help a family out with that.
Okay.
Yeah, lost and broken equipment is covered, but obviously there's limits as to how far we can go with that. How many lost Chromebooks or broken Chromebooks we can deal with for a student.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any final questions or comments before we let Sean and Elyse go? Doesn't look like it. I just want to say, we're all elected officials and have all gotten at one time or another our fair share of angry emails, texts, and phone calls. But I know you guys are probably at a new stratospheric level. We appreciate all that you're doing. Appreciate your considered debates on the issues. And I think, whatever you came up with, it was going to be not liked by probably 50% of the people. So
2/3.
So 2/3, yeah, right. So we appreciate you very much. We appreciate you taking time to join us this evening. And as Pastor Whitley likes to say, please don't be discouraged. You're doing a good job, and we appreciate you. So thank you.
And thank you for the opportunity to get this important information out to our shared constituents.
Thank you.
We certainly appreciate this very important partnership.
Very good. Sean, you need to go back to your vacation and enjoy it a little bit.
Cheers for that. All right, guys.
Thanks
you so much.
All right.
Bye now.
All right. As Elyse and Sean log off, we'll move on to item number 2 on our agenda tonight. A proposed plan for the Matthews Station Street lot. It's Hazen. Who's going to, or Jay, you going to handle this?
I'll set this up. So well, I'll let Jay, I'll set up and talk too much. Jay, why don't you just take it from the beginning?
Jay, you're muted.
Sorry, I was hanging out for the last hour. I'll restart. We've received what I would deem an informal proposal for the lot on Matthew Station Street by Lat Purser. And Hazen asked me to put together just a brief summary of our initial feedback and maybe some options for how the board may want to move forward with this. And Commissioner Urban, did you want to make a comment before I get started?
Yeah, I would, Jay. Thank you very much. Lat Purser, in order to move this project forward, came to us probably over 18 months ago to ask us what they thought the town would like to see here. So we've been working with them directly to bring you what you see tonight. So I would like to ask, and Charlie will always correct me if I'm wrong, to be excused from these deliberations at this point in time.
I think because of your direct involvement as an architect for him, you don't need a vote. You just need to recuse yourself and not participate, deliberate, or vote in any way on this project.
Then we're using the word
recuse. That person's involved.
Okay.
Do we need a motion for that this evening, Charlie?
No, he can recuse himself because he would stand to gain a monetary benefit. So that would be in violation of the statutory conflict of interest law.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So moving forward,
Urban is recused. So go ahead. Go ahead, Jay.
Thank you. I've put together a quick presentation. It is quick, so don't be alarmed. And I realize that a lot of the information about Matthew Station Street is either in my institutional knowledge or even more so Charlie's. And I know a lot of us may not know the history. So I've got just a little bit of brief background, and then we'll get started. Give me just a moment here. I'm going to share my screen. There we go. Right. All right. So Matthew Stations, and Charlie may agree or disagree, is probably one of the more unique endeavors the town worked through. Back in the late 90s, this is what Matthew Station looked like. This is an aerial photo. There was the old Harris Teeter that was defunct, and then you had a few strip buildings. The old town hall was up here, and you can faintly see in this photo. This is the outline of the town green. So we've really come a long way in the past 20 years from a derelict shopping center. Really created the centerpiece for the community that I think everyone would agree we're really proud of. Obviously, town purchased this in 1998. It was a partnership with Lat Purser and Associates, developed under it's considered a downtown development project by state statute, which are the rules that we must abide by still to this day. And any site plans or building elevations, even for building renovation, significant building renovations, still must go through the town board for approval.
Jay, let me just say, jump in here.
Yeah.
The town bought that property long before it ever got into partnership with Lat Purser on developing it.
Okay. Here you see just a snippet of a plat for the development. Of course, the area I've outlined in red is the sole development lot that we have not yet sold in the past 20 years. As you can see, Lat Purser and Associates did take down 3 lots. We, of course, sold the property for what was then the Pure Taqueria, which is now Moe's Barbecue. We did issue an RFP for development about 5 years ago. Lat Purser was the only respondent. They had interest in developing it. We got the property appraised. I think we spent about $2,500 on the appraisal. Came back at $185,000. They ultimately decided that they did not want to move forward with the development, and it's really been sitting. We've had no movement in the past 5 years on the site. Just a quick Polaris map here to show you what we're looking at. It's about a 0.4 acre lot, about a 1/4 acre buildable. The pink dashed or dashed line that you see there is the railroad right of way. So we've got the parking established back there, but the actual building area and is currently set up there. The parking spaces that are public today, they're actually part of that lot. I'll get into that in a little more detail in a moment. And of course, again, the sale of the parcel would be subject to the development agreement. So the proposal that we've received from Lat Purser would be to construct a approximately 4,800 square foot building on a 40 by 60 lot. So essentially, as you're driving down Matthews Station towards Town Hall, this is, as I understand it from speaking with the original architect many years ago, that was never supposed to be an exposed building in. There was supposed to be another building there. So this has always felt kind of unfinished. Their plan would be to go ahead and construct a building generally in this portion of the lot to kind of block the unfinished into that building and really give it a more complete look. They would also like to discuss creating parking on the remainder of the lot. So this is the drawing we have received from Urban Architecture. It is, again, for a two-story building, and you can see that they're showing surface parking on the remainder of the lot. This, of course, is the existing building. This is the view looking down towards Matthews Station Street.
Hey, Jay.
Yes, sir.
Is that building gonna connect to that old building, or there's gonna be a little space in between?
I believe that their intention would be to connect in some way. There's an elevator on the end cap there. So it appears to me that it might be possible. I don't know if there's a breezeway or I would assume it's going to be a breezeway connection, maybe with the second floor connection to service it with that elevator, but not entirely sure. They've discussed that in the past as an option.
Okay.
And then this is just a quick layout I did. I put some polygons on the map just to kind of give us a almost to scale visual of what that might look like. This jog in the concrete where the sidewalk widens, this is approximately where the building would be located, and then the remainder of the parcel would be parking. And I have a I guess a counter proposal that I'll share with you in just a moment. So just wait, there's more. So I'll keep moving through here. This is just a bird's eye aerial again from Polaris that gives you a feel for the development as it stands today. And as you can see, you've already got parking along Depot Lane, Matthews Station. This is a town-owned parking lot, and you've got parking behind Umami. The creation of a parking field here from a urban design perspective really does break. Actually, it really separates the buildings along Matthews Station near Town Hall and North Trade Street. So it is not at all in keeping with the vision as you saw in that plat that I shared earlier. So a couple of options, and I just put these together. These are not the only options, but these are ways that your board could entertain a proposal like this. Option A would be to sell the entire parcel to Lat Purser. It has to be for appraised value. Correct me if I'm wrong, Charlie. There are no other options. So again, appraised for $185 5 years ago. I was quite shocked. I looked at the tax record earlier today, and it was $285,000 based on the most recent reval for Mecklenburg County. Option B would be to sell only a portion of the lot for building only, and we would retain the balance of the lot that we could develop as parking, or we could sell it for an additional building in the future, but just sell the essentially the pad and enough space around it to construct the building. Option C would be to look at listing with a commercial brokerage. We've never really tried to sell the property. We've other than the RFP 5 years ago, we've let the land lay fallow and have not sought a brokerage to put it out to the development community. I've informally pitched it to people a few times over the years that were looking for development land, but we haven't had any takers. And then a couple of discussion points. Do we want a parking lot in a main street location like this? Very valuable property. I would argue this is a superior location from a development perspective than, say, the post office lot that we've talked about paving. You know, that's on a lower traffic street. So this is very highly visible land. And also think about the mobility study, which we have currently underway. A lot of what came out of the mobility study was that we had a parking management and location problem, that we needed to encourage folks to walk more and do a better job of publicizing the parking that we have in some less busy areas. How would we, if we did pave part of this property, is there a cost share with Latt Purser Associates? You know, how does that look? And then finally, what I alluded to earlier is how much of that remaining lot is parking? Can it be multi-purpose? So this is what I'll throw out that I shared with Hazen this afternoon. This is sort of a curveball that I would entertain. As a planner, I think our first goal would be to see the lot developed out, probably a 2 or 3 story mixed use building. We're willing to be flexible if we want to have this discussion with Latt Purser. My thought would be look at maybe some parking on the lot. Maybe it's what I'd call a parking court here, maybe 10 or 12 spaces, and leave space for an additional future building on the end cap. And this is a space that, it could be additional parking during the day, but it would be very convenient to close off after hours to do food truck events, pop-up markets, a lot of the things that Red Brick was doing pre-pandemic, but it would give us a great space. And, we do car shows sometimes around Matthews Alive. So if the board has interest in working further with Latt Purser, our recommendation from staff would be to not to pave the balance of this property, but to look at some scaled back version of parking if we want to consider parking on the parcel at all. I will say from previous experience that they've been very adamant that they wanted to see some additional parking before they would construct any more square footage on Matthew Station Street. And then the image there, this is just a community down in Alabama that actually did sort of a pergola structure, so there's a front door to a lot that they do special events in. So I know that's a really quick overview, and it's sort of a lot of information to digest, but really our goal tonight's to hear from you all and what direction you want us to go. And I see, and I can pull this back up. I'm going to click back to gallery for discussion, and I can always pull this back up if we need to.
All right, Commissioner McCool, you're very popular tonight.
I have a lot to say, I guess. I don't know who I should direct this question to. I guess it's open, but what's the rush to sell the property? For me, I don't necessarily think we should rush to sell. I mean, land is a hot commodity in that. What'd you say?
You were breaking up a little bit. I think we got the gist of your question, though. What's the rush to sell? Although the lot's been vacant for about as long as you've been alive.
Yeah, I think our goal as a town would be to see the development complete. We embarked on this, like I said, about 20 or more years ago now, and it's off the tax rolls, right? I mean, it's appraised at 185, but it's not generating any tax revenue for the community, and we have not put any interim uses into place there. We've had some ideas over the years, but it's not serving a purpose right now. I think that's how I would answer your question. I think 2 decades is a lot of patience. But
Mr. Miller.
Thank you. Jay, aside from Latt Purser, 2 other developers come to mind locally. One is Prophet Dixon, around the corner, fully capable, involved in the entertainment district. And the other is Gary Smith, who built North End. Have either of them been made aware of this lot, and have they provided any interest, shown any interest in it?
It's a good question. Prophet Dixon based on what I've seen on their portfolio, this would be almost too much of a boutique project for them. It's relatively small. They do larger projects. Gary and I have chatted about this a lot over the years. He knows it's available, but I don't think he's ever taken a shot at designing anything for it. I can't recall. He may have a few years ago, but he's well aware of it.
And just a comment, it may be a good looking building, but the other buildings on Matthews Station Street look like they're older storefronts facing Matthews Station Street. This is a little bit more contemporary from my first impression, and it faces either the grass or the future parking lot, which I'm not looking for. If we're going to pave something, let's pave down by the post office instead of that. I like your idea of having 2 end cap buildings and maybe a multi-use center of some form. But the takeaway on that last comment really is it doesn't seem, in my first impression, it doesn't seem to fit in with the style of Matthews or the architecture of Matthews Station Street, new, being made to look old. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
I think, and maybe this is not what Ken intended, but to have a project with a rendered building come up and then to say, what are we going to do with this property feels sudden. Sitting there for 2 decades, vacant, sure, that's been a long time, but for this to come to us as a board, and here's what's already been really worked out, and then these are your options, it feels like that's maybe a sudden sort of rushing to a decision, and probably just as a, that's something we need to do as a board, discuss what our vision is for this property, instead of feeling like, okay, here's this option or here's this option as a sudden discussion on a Zoom call.
Any response, Jay or Hazen?
Let me take that. I mean, it is, I've been here 17 years. I guess when I got here, well, the project cruised along. I don't know, but no buildings been built, I think, in 15 years. And I don't think the town has made a strong marketing effort to really, Lat was the master project developer, whatever. I don't think we, as an organization, have taken the bull by the horns, and we've been patient. And I do think I think it's time to complete this and go on. I know, particularly for board members, well, this is the first I've heard of it, so we could do we could market it, right? We could put it for sale and see what people want to do with it. And you guys, it's all within the board's bailiwick of what you want to see done with it. That's one option. You can explore Lat's idea and go back to him. Or we could, we talked about this mini conference. If some board members want just more time to kind of think about this and spend time letting it marinate in your own brains. I mean, it's been there 20 years. It can wait another 3 months before we have more talking points. But I do think Jay, in a short time, has put together something pretty creative that kind of adds to the creative mix.
Right, and I agree. I'm not saying it's a bad presentation. I appreciate the work that's been put into it, and but if we're going to talk about it, then let's talk about maybe what do we want to attract to Matthews that is an opportunity for that lot, and is it more retail that can't afford to stay alive and with the cost of rent in downtown? Do we want more microbreweries or restaurants, or do we want to bring something like Imagine onto Matthews for a small space and something that's a little more family friendly than another restaurant bar. That, I guess what I'm saying is I didn't realize this was going to be a brainstorming session, and instead it feels more like a presentation to make a choice and move on.
Yeah, I'm sorry it came across that way. As we really were given this and needed to react to it, and we wanted to get it out in front of you all. I guess me personally, my biggest concern was there's been a push to pave this lot for probably the past 10 or 12 years, and we're very adamantly against that. It's just too important of a piece of land, and I didn't want to see. It sounds like the board doesn't have interest in that, and that's good. And Commissioner Gardner, to your point, I've always thought, if you did a multi-story building here, could the upper floors be micro apartments like they're doing in South End that could be affordable housing? We're looking at options for affordable housing. So I think you've got a great point that this is important, and maybe the board needs to have additional discussion. But I did want to throw these ideas out here. Now, Hazen, I guess our job is to go back to Lat and just, it's his prerogative if he wants to continue to chase this and bring it to the board.
Well, it's a good point. I mean, as the way I understand it, Mayor, Lat approached you, pretty much gave you this and said, talk to the board about it. Maybe
That's right.
Paraphrasing. So I think Jay and I have done our duty. Certainly, I guess what I'd say to give Lat feedback, it doesn't sound like anybody on the board is really excited about this, and the board would like to take some time to think about what's in the town's best interest. My only ask would be, could we push to put it on this mini conference? It's getting bigger and bigger, by the way, in October, because it's been around a long time.
Commissioner Miller.
Thank you. Well, we haven't talked money, and so that I guess we are just brainstorming, but if I heard the number 280,000 thrown out, and it's a third of that plot, it sounds like Lat is looking to pay 70 for that and build a building and then have us pave his parking lot. So to me, the math doesn't work. It's not that enticing.
Just to provide some feedback from my perspective, I kind of echo what Commissioner Miller said initially. I think the building looks a little contemporary. I mean, looking at one view of it, maybe it didn't look better with different elevations or whatever, but it does look slightly out of place. But of the options presented tonight, I would prefer, Jay, what you have presented, where we could have something like that back lot space or something in the middle that could be, I really like the idea of having a space for, artists or pop-up markets or things like that on the weekends. I think that goes with our vibrancy and things like that. Have it convertible, maybe parking sometimes, but allow it to be used for other things, for special events. So my feedback would be maybe look at the building to make it look a little more new but looks old, and also I like your idea of having the end cap building. So yeah, I'm not willing to say that I'm totally against it. I would just like to review and look at all of our options. So Hazen, can we add this to our mini conference, which is pretty soon going to become a major conference?
Yes, and maybe we could provide Lat feedback right away about, one, we're going to sell the property for fair market value, or that portion, and the building's a little too contemporary, and just see where it goes from there. But no matter what happens, but we still put it on the planning conference, because it's possible Lat say, okay, well, y'all go market it or do your thing. I'm out of it.
Hey, Mayor, I would like I think we ought to do something with the lot, and what all of y'all have said, I think is good suggestion to get a bang for the buck for that lot if it's valued at 280 some. But my concern, I would like that building to connect with those other buildings. I mean, if you look at all the other ones, they're all connected together as extension. And and I like, Jay, I do like that rendering that you show with the middle part is maybe a lot, and then another end lot connect with that and maybe have that there as well too. But at the same time, always keep in mind too, I still like to keep that electric charging station there. Whoever buys or whoever we do with that last corner lot, keep that electric charge station there.
So I'll email you all the presentation. I know everything was up there briefly if you want to take another look at the building and the layouts and put that together quickly. I think that parking area will work. It probably would only net 8 or 10 new parking spaces at most because you have to take out 2 or 3 just to access it. So it's not a huge gain, but it does provide a multifunction space.
I think for those of us that have been on the board for a while, Larry, I don't remember if you were on the board, but certainly Jeff and John Urban presented, I believe it was his design, another interpretation where you had like the rooftop garden patio restaurant deal upstairs and maybe a convertible space below. And I really was a lot more excited about that, but Lat said the numbers on that one didn't work out. But it was, you remember that, Commissioner Miller? That was pretty exciting, but the numbers didn't work out, unfortunately, I think. But it was convertible space downstairs and maybe a rooftop restaurant or something on top.
Now this, well, that's a different. We've had a lot of proposals, Mayor. This was the 2015 proposal that Lat Purser submitted with their RFP response, and it was a full block building that would have connected. So we got a lot of historical information here. I just wanted to share that so everybody could see it.
I like that. I like that open rooftop space. I think that looks nice.
Yeah. It's valuable to share, but as I recall, didn't he want something close to $1 million of our skin in the game?
I think so. That's why it died, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Do we have any other questions or comments for Jay or Hazen regarding the Matthews Station Street lot?
All right. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Good job, Jay.
Commissioner Urban, you can, I guess, unrecuse yourself. All right. Welcome back, John. So the last thing we want to talk about tonight is the Crestdale Road multi-use path and NCDOT's apparent desire to abscond with our money. So CJ, are you going to talk about that?
Yes, sure, Mayor, I can do that. So if the board remembers, thanks to Commissioner Whitley, we have money that is going towards the Crestdale Road multi-use path, or side path as we're calling it now. That money is split into 2 pots. One had originally come from the House and one had come from the Senate. I always get confused which one it is, but one went through the state budget office and one went through the DOT. The one that went through the state budget office is the money that we have been spending now for professional services, for design, and for acquisitions. There's some easements and things like that.
That was the Senate, CJ.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. The other portion, the other 125,000 is through the DOT, and due to the DOT's funding shortfalls, they are not allowed to have any projects let, and that includes this as well, even though it's really supposed to be our money. So based on that, I told Susan to slow down, no rush. Until last week, we got an email from the state budget office saying that, well, first they said we had to have spent the money by June 30th, and that we're not eligible to get anything else back. Looking through the contract and everything, we actually have until August 30th to encumber their funds, the rest of their funds. Right now, we have roughly $70,000 left of that money that goes to the state budget office. So what Susan and I did is we worked over the weekend and put together a contract to let. To be able to do that, we have to advertise it this week and get it out so that we can have it bid in time to have a contract to bring it back to you all to get approved, to get a PO by August 31st. So that is done. We have sent it to DOT for review, and we are hoping that they're okay with it the way it is. What we're doing is breaking the project up into 2 pieces. The first piece being that portion that's funded by the remainder of the money from the state budget office. And then the second phase is that portion of the DOT money, the $125,000. That way we can hopefully get a better price by having the full project there, but only making it available as the funds become available. So that's where we stand right now.
So, Hazen, maybe I misunderstood from you, but I thought that they had denied all of the money to us, including the original 125,000.
Well, I think I probably wasn't as clear as I should have been. So the 120, and I know it gets confusing, but the 125 money, that's the House money that went through DOT and they put on hold. And you guys asked Charlie to send them a letter, a demand letter, or whatever you want to call it, saying we want 125. Charlie, you got that letter today, the response.
Correct.
They said no dice.
Basically, they're saying that the emergency legislation doesn't allow them to expend any DOT money.
That's unacceptable because it's not their money, it's our money. It's not DOT money, it's Matthew's money.
No, listen, the Senate money was ours and went through the state budget. We got that, but sounds like we've got some balance there that we've got to spend. The 125,000 didn't go through the House because Bill Brawley got defeated. And in that situation, it was later that the current representative jumped in, but the power block in the House said, well, we're not going to go along with this. Send it through the DOT. So then they sent it through the DOT to get that second 125,000, and that's why it's caught there. It never was our money, like the money in the state budget that we got through the Senate, because we had the power block to get that first 125,000 through the state budget and not through the DOT.
Well, it was allocated to us.
Well, yes, and we will ultimately get it when they have monies to be able to expend.
So the latest, I know it's frustrating. So the latest information CJ just got last week was, oh, and guess what? We want to take that's, the Senate money. We want to keep that. And so CJ and Susan have worked out a way to let's go ahead and encumber that before and get a PO that encumbers it before they can snatch that from us. And CJ, what work would be of that with that $70,000? What work will be done?
So that should be enough to build the multi-use path from Matthews Chapel Road over to roughly the second drive at the church.
Okay.
Up near between the two houses, CJ?
Yes, sir. At Mount Moriah, correct, between the two houses.
So one of the things we're going to do when we bid out, we'll bid the whole project. And then in theory, we'll only have money for the 70, but the board could say, well, guess what? Let's go ahead and pay for the whole thing out of our coffers. Now, I guess if you do that, the likelihood of getting that 25, I could see DOC saying, well, guess what? You build it with your own money. We're not giving it to you now, period. Or the board has the option to say, well, let's just hold off. Here's what we think it's going to cost and wait on DOT to free up the money. But that's a decision you guys could make when you see the bids.
Commissioner Miller.
Hazen, could that be part of the multi-use path between downtown Matthews and the Sportsplex? It would create somewhat of a loop or a circle, wouldn't it?
So need Charlie in on this. So the traditional argument for the tourism dollars is to tie the Sportsplex to downtown.
Right.
And we are using that along Matthews Midhill Road, those tourism dollars. This is a connection. I think that's a tougher argument to make, Commissioner Miller.
But isn't there a path between Crestdale and Town Hall now along the railroad tracks?
There is, but this portion would not connect it over to the Sportsplex. What it does is make a loop that we see a lot of people walking on to begin with. It creates more of a loop for people to use.
But Jeff, to your question, this multi-use path that's going by Crestdale is going to go up to Matthews School Road and go down and connect to that multi-use path that's already down there. And now it's going all the way back over to John Street. Am I right, Hazen?
You are correct. but traditionally, Charlie, the way I understood your argument about tourism dollars was sportsplex to downtown, and this just creates a neater loop, walking, bicycling, pedestrian loop in our community. I mean, Charlie may see it differently, but I don't see the the argument to use tourism funds. And I assume, Jeff, that's where you're getting to, using tourism dollars for this. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So I think this would be obviously at the pleasure of the board, but it would be my recommendation that we build the whole thing now and pay for it out of our own coffers, because I have no real confidence that NCDOT is going to pay us the money anytime soon. They're in very dire straits. But it's extremely disappointing that money that was allocated to the town of Matthews is being really, I think, stolen from us by NCDOT. I use a word that I probably shouldn't use, a polite company, to say what I think it is. It's terrible. I mean, it's.
I agree with you, Mayor, but now, I'm gonna be honest with you now. I'm the one that started this conversation with Bill Brawley and for Dan Bishop, both of them together. And Dan upheld his end. Bill upheld his end he lost, and then it went the other way. But now I'm of the persuasion. Now I'm always have been an old country boy. A man's word is his bond. Now it's for the community, for the Black community. Every town has a Black community, and we were trying to make sure that community represent and look as nice as all the other part. And the original plan, when we sat at the board, and me, CJ, and Hazen, we wrote that. We met over at the church to outline this multi-use path along with Paul Braley in my office over at the church in the conference room. We did those plans, and that was what we had set. Now, I'm of the persuasion now. When you renege on a man's word and you hold his money and then tell him you ain't going to give it and can't assure him that if you bill it, we'll give it back, then let's sue him. I don't have no problem with that. Let's sue him and put some pressure on him, and that'll be along with all the other suits the DOT has. And then when they let somebody say whether they did us wrong or not, and not just for the Crestdale, even though it's coming through my community, but it's the town as well too. It's just representative of town. It's a good looking look. The plan that I got hanging on my wall, and what y'all seen is going to connect with the Crestdale Heritage and tie into Matthew School Road. And I rode those paths, and I had opportunity to walk those paths from Matthew School Road over to Charles Street and all the way down going over to John Street. It's a connectivity, and just to lead the part out in the Black community is wrong. And I say I'm for whatever we need to do to make it complete. I know we got that sentence suspended. You know, CJ and Hazen, when I was in that meeting with you and Bill and Paul Bailey, the last thing I said to y'all, I'm a man, I remember exactly what I said. I remember what folks said to me too. But the last thing I told y'all, spend the money. Spend it. I said, spend it quick. That's exactly what I shared. So CJ, spend that $70,000 quick. Let it roll. Let the good time roll.
Yeah, my concern is we've made this promise to the community, and now I hate to go back on it. It's been publicized that we're going to build this, and now we're not. We're going to wait indefinitely for NCDOT to give us our money back. Sorry, Hazen.
Well, I guess what I would say is, I mean, in my experience, Representative Hunt has always been very approachable. And, you know, if we build this thing, I could see us going back to her and telling her this story and like, look, we never got the money for DOT, that she may be able to go through the route that Bishop went through, which was he went through the mayor pro tem. And the original plan was to go through the Speaker of the House and their contingency line item. Of course, that was a Republican, and that was Bill Brawley, and things shifted. But I got a feeling Rachel Hunt would work very hard because she could see this just didn't right on the pure basic facts of the situation. So if we build it, I wouldn't give up hope that we wouldn't get our money back somehow, some way from Representative Hunt.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely keep pushing.
Yeah, I'm confident. I'm an optimist. I believe in timing. Timing is everything, and we know what politics does. We're looking at it every day, so we know what that plays in it. So, but at the due season in 3 months or 4 months, we're gonna have another election. So it might, to our turn, we might get that money back pretty quick.
CJ, do you have the marching orders that you need?
Yeah, so far I think I'm okay to proceed as I am. Right now, I hear some consensus. I think about possibly doing all of it, but I think we'll wait to make that decision until we have bids in and maybe some more information on what we will or won't get back.
Right. Got to pray on it, Rev.
Yeah, and now let me say this. Now the $70,000, do we have that secured, CJ Hazen?
It's in his
as
pocket.
best we can.
Say again.
I said as best we can, we have it secured. That they are, and they're actually going to reimburse us for $16,000 that we spent before we had the contract in place. So that, to me, that is a good sign.
Is that 16 on the 70, CJ?
No, that's taken out of the 70. So we have a choice of either reimbursing ourselves or just keep moving forward, which is what I prefer to do.
Yeah, this is doubly frustrating because, you know, it's in the vast scheme of things a relatively insignificant amount when some of these projects are building in town cost millions and millions and millions of dollars. 125,000 is not going to break the bank, I don't think so.
Nah.
All right, I think that's all we have tonight. Hazen, do you have anything else to speak about tonight?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
I appreciate everybody participating. Anybody else have anything else they'd like to say before we call this meeting?
Thank you, guys.
We need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
To adjourn.
All in favor? All opposed? All right. Good night. Thanks for joining this special meeting, and we'll see you in a week.